welcome to the Behind the Mic podcast. It's your boy Jumpman Jay. I got a special guest. Been trying to get this done for a while. I've known this young man for a long time. We've been trying to put this together, but just timing wasn't right. But we happened to make it happen today. So I said, let's get it done. So I'm sitting with my boy, Casket D. What's good, baby?
Hey, blessings, my brother. Thank you for having me. I feel great, man.
Man, it's been a long time coming, bro. I said, we've been trying to get this done, but just the timing was wrong, and now we finally got it done.
Two busy men, man.
Yeah, man. I know you travel. You got the music stuff going. So I remember telling you like, hey, man, when you get done with your music stuff, you was down in Houston or something like that, right?
Yeah, probably out there.
Yeah. So
Texas.
I know you was out. Yeah, you was out of town. So I said, when you get back, when you touch down, hit me up. We'll get it done. So I appreciate you being a man of your word.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, we're gonna get right into it. So for those of y'all who don't know, my boy Joey, he's a rapper. He's been doing this a long time, man.
For sure.
His first project, which is one of my favorite projects, is 80 Loafs, man. This was the first joint that I really sat down and listened to, because mind you, I've been around him and his music, and I'd heard some mixtape stuff, right? And I'm always gonna support my people, so I'm an avid listener. And then he put out the 80 Loafs project. So just walk us through that whole 80 Loafs project. Like, where was your mindset? I know that was your first real album.
Correct.
Right, so let's just go through the whole like maturation process of getting to that point and putting out that album.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you alluded to earlier, first of all, this guy played a part in the music journey as well. Like, Pax, our brother Pax.
Yes, sir.
We used to be in the studio in Mount Vernon. It was Mount Vernon, correct?
Yeah, man.
At the time,
yeah.
and that was compliments of you, and we would working then, and this is early on, like as teenagers, early in the day. You know what I mean? And music was always just a passion of mine. I was born a hip hop baby. Like, that's how I feel. It was like my uncles was listening to, like, he was listening to old school stuff, and then it
So that was like your first intro into rap, was like what your uncles was listening to?
Yeah, so my uncle Vic, he's 12 years older than me.
Okay.
And I don't have an older sibling. And then my older cousin Maul, he's 5 years older than me. So them two were the closest things that I had to an older sibling.
Gotcha.
Right? And they both, for the most part, listened to a lot of the same music. They were heavy on, like, the Wu.
Okay.
And Mobb Deep.
Because I was gonna ask you, like, what were your influences
early
on that kind of cultivated your style? Because you got a super New York sound, but everybody says it's a Yonkers sound. I don't really feel like you got a Yonkers sound. I feel like you got like a New York sound. Because that Yonkers sound is a little different. Obviously, we have a certain type of vernacular. We say we say certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, you always sounded like a gritty New York rapper.
Yeah, so I think for my age group, I was put onto a lot of music that a lot of people in my age group weren't, right? Okay. So, like, they were listening to the OGCs and Helter Skelters, and they were listening to the Wu and Mob, where a lot of the people from my age group really started diving deep into rap music later on with DMX and like 50 Cent and stuff like that. Okay. That's where I think they became real avid rap listeners, where I already was there several years prior, because the people I was around at that time, that's what they were into, and they were older than me. So I kind of like fell in love with that mid-90s New York sound.
Me too.
You know what I mean? That was it for me. I loved Jizza Liquid Swords. Like, that was the album I loved.
No one ever talks about that
they
album,
don't.
Man. That's how I know you were a hip hop connoisseur.
They don't.
Because Liquid Swords that's a classic.
That's a classic.
It's a classic. It gets overlooked a lot.
As time went on, it's funny you say that, right? Because now, like, it's the consensus that Only Built for Cuban Links is their best solo album. But
that's up there.
I personally believe it's out of that or Liquid Swords, and as time went on, that became like the popular consensus, where Liquid Swords kind of got put in the back burner. But if you were around for that time period, you remember.
Liquid Swords was everything, bro.
For sure. So, like, that's the stuff that really got me into rap music, as far as like I was a head, like a hip hop head.
Yeah.
And then I started rapping early too, around that time, a little after that. But
how old were you when you put together your first, like, 16?
I was probably maybe like 11, 12 maybe at most. Shout out to my man, what's my man name from junior high? He was from Locust, right? And they had the Hash Kids going on at the time. And shout out to Fonte, rest in peace Fonte and the Hash Kings and all of that. But they were like the only young crew at that time. And I remember they had a studio set up in 77 in somebody's apartment there.
Oh, wow.
And we used to cut like middle school and go over there to just record, to be able to record.
Damn.
And it was like on, you know, we
So
recorded on tape and stuff like that,
yeah.
yeah. But you felt like you were doing something, right? Because back then, it wasn't like it is now where everybody had a studio in their garage or in their room.
Your resources were slim to none back then.
Slim. And it cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, you know, and shout out to the Hash Kings too. Like I said, Fonte and Hash and Unruly and all that. They kind of, shout out to John Jay, they kind of groomed the young kids from their neighborhood to become these rappers, right? So it was like, you know, my man Charles, there you go, CJ. So we would go over there and dibble and dabble, and that got me a little bit open. And then my cousin and them was rapping, so we had a crew called Area 51 from our neighborhood.
Okay.
And we would rap on his Mac. So his father was a graphic designer.
Gotcha.
So him and his brother always used Mac, and they became graphic designers as well. But we always had the top of the line computers because that's what they did for the line of work.
Okay, so you kind of ahead of the curve.
We were ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So we were recording right on his Mac, and I remember like we made whatever microphone the Mac came with at the time, and what we did is we took what's it called, a hanger, like how you would do with like playing basketball in your apartment and stuff, and we would wrap a do-rag around it as like a pop filter.
Oh,
so we
snap.
used that as a pop filter, and that was like the first time. Yeah, you know, and we were real young at this time. I was probably like 11, 12. But then my first real experience in real studios, shout out to my brother T, he moved up to Poughkeepsie from Yonkers, and then he found a couple real studios up there, and we would go up there on the weekends and stay the whole weekend and just make it like a party, but at the same time recording, booking sessions. So we would book like 6-7 hour blocks on Saturday, 6-7 hour blocks on Sunday.
Gotcha.
And then after that, we come back to his, they owned a house up there, but his pops was a truck driver, and his mom worked a lot. So basically, we had the house. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was like, 14 maybe, 14, 15, in that range.
So you got introduced to the game super young.
Real young, yeah.
And then by the time you figured out, like, oh, hey, we could, put some on some wax, you was about 14, 15.
Yeah, that's when we started recording in real studios. And then started going to the mixtape era, right, where we were putting out certain mixtapes, like in the later teens and stuff like that. And leading into the 80 Loafs. So I put out several mixtapes prior to that.
Oh, yeah. I alluded to that. I know you was definitely on your grind.
Yeah, for sure. And
you just being around Pax and those guys.
Yes.
And, the whole MGB situation.
Yeah.
I was privy to a lot of the music.
For sure. And we were making a lot of moves locally. And I wanted to expand past that, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, at the time, obviously the avenue you think of is, getting signed and this, that, and the third. And I was doing like a lot of stuff, like we were doing Monse showcases at the time and stuff like that.
I remember the showcases.
So we were doing all stuff like that. And shout out to Money Nels. He was in the scope, and he's done a lot of stuff, and his brother Gabby and all them. They gave us a lot of advice early on, and he was like, man, invest that money and effort into your craft and to your music and promoting it. Don't worry about these showcase stuff like that. It's a money grab for the people with whatever names they have, right?
Yeah.
And I took that to heart, and I said, I want to really elevate and expand. So I knew I was getting a lot better musically, and I was always really good, but like at this point, like I felt like I was past doing just mixtapes. I said, I'm gonna create an album, and I wanted to approach it like an album. So at the time, mixtapes was like, it was kind of like you would just do whatever record you were doing and put them together and put them on one CD, right?
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of good records. But I'm a fan of albums. Like all of my favorite stuff was great albums because they were either a story, they had the cohesion, they had everything that made it a beautiful album, right? So for me, I was like, I'm beyond doing mixtapes, personally.
Yeah.
I'm gonna create an album where from start to finish, it has the cohesion, it tells a story, and the 80 Loafs actually was supposed to be, not supposed to be, it still is, but it's part of a trilogy.
Okay.
So 80 Loafs was a moniker of mine. It was an alias. And what it represents, like if you have anyone who haven't seen, the cover art is a robot there. And it's like, it's leaking the blood.
Yeah.
And it's where the heart is. So it was like, what it stands for is breaking out of that assembly line structure where it's like you go to school, you get your 9 to 5, and you just survive. It's hard to live your dream out, right? Especially as you become an adult and you have more responsibilities and stuff like that. So what that symbolism on the cover art stands for was putting your heart into your dream to break free from that structure and actually live your dream, not being that robot like everybody else. You know
that's deep, man. I didn't know that, man. I'm happy you broke that down.
Yeah.
Because I think most people, they look at cover art just to be cover art, but when you have somebody break it down and explain to you, and the deepness of that cover art, I was always wondering like what that cover art was about.
Because it's dope. My thing was, I didn't want to do typical stuff, right? I'm very creative. I didn't want to just do a picture of me and stuff like that. I always liked art. So I said, you know what? This is a way for me to showcase other artists and incorporate it into my music and make it all make sense. So to me, I wanted to be a movie, you know what I mean? And that's part one of the trilogy, and that's when it's the hardest part, right? So it's really the trilogy. I haven't released the other two yet, but it's the 80 Loafs LP, and then the follow-up is the Rise of 80, and then the last one will be the Life of Loafs.
Okay.
So the last two haven't dropped yet, you know?
You know what I like about you? Your approach to music, how you construct an album. That's how you know a real MC, right? A real MC has depth in the project that they do, right? You want to tell a story. You want to give everybody, because within hip hop there's different genres, right?
For sure.
But how we grew up listening to hip hop, you know, the real MC gave you that storytelling. He gave you that street track. You know, of course, he want to give something for the people to dance and move to. I feel like you've always been able to bounce around and hit all these facets on your albums, and that's how you construct an album. Because a lot of the times you hear certain artists and they put out songs or they put out albums, and it's like it sounds like one song continuous.
Yeah.
You know, from one to whatever the track list is, it all kind of blends. And the one thing that I have noticed with your projects is that there's variations in the music, right?
I agree.
And hard thing for a lot of guys to do as artists is just keep that lyrical content coming. A lot of guys are catchy with punchlines, and they give you that. But there's a lot of depth to your bars, bro. Like,
I appreciate
you throw some biblical stuff in there, like you throw some life stuff in there, and how hard is it? Like this is like what I was trying to get to. Is how hard is it to balance that, bro? Because you know you're trying to move units, right? Because that's what this is about. You know, getting downloads, right? But you also want to give to your craft. You don't want to take away from it. How do you balance that?
I think personally, so back to your first point is like there's such a thin line. Like I feel you have to have the cohesion without having it sound like one long track. Yeah. And I feel like that's the biggest, because if you go too far the other way, it sounds like a mixtape. It sounds like a whole bunch of stuff just jumbled together.
Yeah.
But if you do it all the way left, then it sounds like one long song, right?
Yes.
So how do you make sure that you're getting your point across, the subject matter, and the story stays without, and that's what I feel like I've been blessed to kind of master that and know how to do that, right? But as far as when it comes to the substance and stuff like that, and just making sure I'm not taking taking off on a bar or anything, I take extreme pride in being a lyricist.
Yes.
Because my favorite artists are lyricists. So I was influenced by the lyricists. Like I love, that doesn't mean that's all I listen to. I like a lot of catchy stuff. I like certain stuff that some people aren't really lyrical like that. I like their music. Me as an artist though, I take pride in making sure that you're not catching me off on one bar. And you know, my thing is I want to be able to bring substance to the table. I want to be able to be relatable. And I feel like the best way to be relatable as an artist is to be pure to who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So that's why you're going to get stuff about God or my family in there. You're going to get stuff about rage in there. You're going to get stuff about prospering through things in there, because that's who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So, you know, for anyone who knows me, that's always helped me too, because remember, we came up, it was a cypher era. Like,
yes.
You know, the internet wasn't popping the same way.
Yeah.
You had to make a name for yourself rapping around other rappers live. And what always helped me in the cypher was not just that I was a really good rapper, but people would always tell me afterwards, like, yo, I felt what you were saying. Like,
yes.
You know? And I think that that came to fruition when, you know, I got into some stuff when I was younger and I almost lost my life. And I had a writer's block after that. When I got out the hospital, I had a writer's block. And the first thing I wrote about to get past that block was the situation that happened.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I started just rapping about my true feelings, my true thoughts, my true life. As opposed to prior to that, I was rapping kind of like, you know, I'm not going to say punchline-y, but for lack of better words, punchline-y.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, I was like, I'm just going to give the people me, for real. And that's another thing, like you said about moving units and stuff. I've been blessed, man, because I took marketing serious. I took, you know, presentation serious.
Yeah. I looked at your Spotify numbers, man. You moving.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah,
but I create the music, honestly, for myself. I'm just blessed that people gravitate to it. The other, outside of the music, is what I do for the people. I want to make sure that everything is tip-top. The presentation, the mixing. You know, shout out to my brother 20, who mixes and masters pretty much everything that I put out. Like, I just want everything to be as professional as possible. And I think that, along with people realizing, like, this dude, there's no gimmicks with him. You know what I mean? He's giving you him. And the quality of music, I think it's worked in my favor. So I'm just blessed, you know? I'm blessed. But I make sure to make that conscious effort to not take off. I don't want to take off.
Let me ask you a question, just to backtrack a little bit. When you had that life-changing situation, the bounce back, right? Like walk us through that. Like what was your, like, where was your mind at? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because you experienced a traumatic situation.
For sure.
Right, and then you know you wanted to get back to the music. I think I met you like right after that.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly when I met you. So
yeah, probably around
Green,
that time.
And Green kind of explained to me the situation, and then I was like, oh, okay, cool. I hadn't met you yet, and then I started to be around you guys.
Yep, it had to be right around that time.
Yeah,
so
it was definitely around that time. So I remember him talking about it, and then I actually met you.
Yep. So this, you know, I live by this. Trauma, we all face trauma in life, right? Some is physical, some's emotional, some's mental, some is all three in one.
Yes.
And it's not just one incident. Like, it can be continuous throughout our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Life is not always gonna be peachy. But for me, I realized you go through stages with it, right? So initially when it happened to me, I was angry. And I had to find a way to get past that anger.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when you finally find a way to, I'm not going to say get rid of the anger, but move forward with it, learn to live with it. The next thing that hit me personally was I was just very grateful.
Yeah.
Right? So now I was grateful to be here. And it gave me a different perspective of life because I seen how quick, you know, it could have been gone, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, I don't want to jeopardize my life for something so minuscule. I always felt, you know, and this might sound, for lack of better words, arrogant, but I always felt special. Like I had a purpose here. And it's not arrogance. Everyone should feel like that because we do have a purpose here. What it is you got to figure that out.
You got to figure that out, yeah. You sound like
but, you know, I was like, I'm not going to let something take me out of here and me not live what I'm supposed to be doing.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Me not impacting. And I always knew since I was young, I was blessed to be somebody that impacts people, right? So I could steer somebody in the wrong way. I could steer somebody in the right way. But I knew I could steer others. And I don't take that for granted either because I feel like that's a position given to you by God, right? Where not everybody has that, for lack of a better word, power. I don't like to make it seem like you're more powerful than somebody or controlling. But not everyone has that gift, let's say.
Yeah.
You know? So I don't take that for granted too much. You know what I mean? I knew that a lot of my friends, I could make sure that they went one way or another, and if I was steering this way, we might go that way, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to steer. I felt I was also responsible for more than just my own life, too.
Yeah.
And that played a big part. But I went through anger. I went through gratefulness, you know. I also felt resentful for a while. Like, there was a lot of people in that situation that day, and I felt like maybe certain people should have did more, or I blamed people, you know what I mean? But nobody forced me to do what I did in that situation. Like, I was standing up for my loved one. I didn't have to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I did. So I had to learn to live with my decisions because we're ultimately responsible for what happens to ourselves when we make those decisions to do that.
Powerful statement right there.
So, you know, and then from there, but this is what I live by. Trauma changes you. Now, it either changes you For the worse or for the better?
Yeah, me too. The worst right out of my mouth.
But you're not the same after you're traumatized.
Yeah.
So for me, I look at it as one of the best things that happened to me. Although physically it was terrible and it put my family through a lot of stuff and a lot of my loved ones. In hindsight, it changed me for the better because I started living with a purpose where I don't think before that I was. I might have thought I was, but I wasn't. You know, hindsight changes things. You look back and you're like, man, I wasn't. I was living real reckless at the time.
Yeah, you took that situation and you kind of made something out of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they experience things like that, they go the opposite direction. If not, it makes them worse. You know what I'm saying? Instead of them saying, being like, hey, I've experienced something, right? I managed to make it out on the other side. What can I do to change the narrative or the trajectory of my life?
Yeah, for sure.
And you definitely, I did see you focus a lot on the music, and there was that, you had like tunnel vision.
That became my therapy, man.
Yeah, bro.
I really did.
Because I remember meeting you and like it was music. I'm like, yo, this kid is really on to something. And you know, that's when I started paying attention to your guys' music. And I'm like, oh, these kids is on to something. Because it's not like they rapping to rap. These kids got bars. They putting you know, good songs together. And I'm like, okay, these dudes got some talent, man. And then I remember just listening to some of y'all stuff, man. And, you know, being from Yonkers, you know, we have a rich musical history. I don't care what anybody says, man. Like, we're the forgotten place in New York. I always say that because, especially in hip hop, right? You know, because we're known for DMX, The Lox, you know, and we got a bunch of local guys. You know, we got the J Noms, we got, you know, Black Jesus. We got, you know what I'm saying? We got a bunch of people. But the guys that really put us on the map, right? Let's call it spade a spade, man. It's The Lox.
For sure.
And X, right? So you guys got a track that you guys did. You guys did a remake.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, man. That's like one of my favorite projects that you guys did. A favorite song, I should say. Now, that's one of my favorite hip hop tracks.
Period. The original, right?
Period. The original.
So if you're gonna step in those shoes, you gotta.
Yeah. So like, I remember hearing that, yo, you guys was gonna do this. And I go, listen, man, niggas done started something.
Yeah, you better do it right.
You better do it right, man. And I just remember listening to it, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
You guys really put the pen to paper on that, man. Like, what was the thought process on that joint? Because you walking into a studio, right, and you're gonna record something from like that's hometown love.
Yeah.
How do you like walk me through that? Like, what was your mind? What was your mind
the way that came about, like, you know, at that time, we just felt like there's nobody out here that can mess with us. Like, there's not a soul that can mess with us out here. So we were saying, let's start doing some classic cuts as a crew. Because the thing is, like, my albums aren't going to sound like Pax's albums. And Pax's albums ain't going to sound like Black's albums.
Yeah.
And Black's albums ain't going to sound like Sin's albums.
Yep.
But when we're together, it blends seamlessly. But that's because we were all really real friends, you know?
Yes.
It was no makeshift team. Like, it was like we were hanging out every single day, all of us. Like, people were staying at each other's houses. We were breaking night together. So we wanted to display what we can do as a unit. And we was like, what better way is paying homage to, one, our hometown, right? Mm-hmm. The people that influenced us. Because if you're from Yonkers, I mean, hip-hop period, if you're a hip-hop head that came up after the mid to late 90s, the Lox and DMX had to play a part.
Absolutely. Right?
And then it being from Yonkers, a big part for us. So we like, all right, we're going to start doing some classic records. And that happened to be the first one. And we was like, this is it right here. We got to shoot the video for it. And we knew we handled what we handled on it. And we knew we had to because it's big shoes to fit, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like you don't want to come weak on a classic record from the same city that these people on that classic record. You know what I mean? Yeah. You gotta step up to the plate. So we were doing that. We did other records too. And that was our game plan for a little bit. It kind of like shifted course. But the game plan at that moment, because we got an incredible feedback, especially locally. But like the blogs picked it up everywhere. You know? So shout out to SK and Not Right, and then mad blogs at that time was picking it up. And that helped, you know, that helped a lot. That's what helped me elevate too. And that was gearing up before the 80 Loafs, but like close to that time period.
It's within that same time frame.
For sure.
Okay.
That was like around the time that I probably was saying I'm going to start doing an album. Or I might have been working on it already. But like that was in that time period.
Okay.
Right? And that helped me a lot because, getting a lot of blog exposure and stuff like that, it took me to ears that I wasn't necessarily in at the moment. And then like with the 80 Loafs, that's what happened there. Once I put that out, I had all the blog love, and that changed things for me, and I was headlining a lot of shows all across, the country, but especially in New York, all the prominent venues. And then from there, what I realized was I kind of hit a ceiling there too, because I'm like, all right, when you're headlining these shows, most of the people that are there are already your fans.
Yeah.
So I said, how can I, for my next album, I knew I was working on my next full-length album, and I said, how can I garner new fans, right? And I said, instead of focusing so much on the live show, I'm going to focus a lot more on press.
Gotcha.
Because I realized what the blogs did for me with the 80 Loafs. It took me from being local to now in the ears of people way past my reach. Yeah. So I said, all right, if I focus on press more for my next album, because I know what I'm going to deliver, it's going to win for me. And it did. In hindsight, I look back, it worked. But thank God I took that path, because I could have just been comfortable doing what I was doing. I was getting booked everywhere to headline. I'm making a little bit of cash. These are prominent venues that a few years back I'm thinking, I can't wait to touch those stages. Yeah, now I'm not forgetting about touching them. Yeah, I'm the headliner, I'm the name on the marquee,
Let me ask, so did that spin off into the Cypher? Because I feel like you got a lot of like notoriety after that joint.
That helped a lot, right? So, the Cypher with This Is 50 Cypher.
Yeah, bro.
That was great.
Somebody sent that to me. Like I remember I forgot, I was sitting somewhere and somebody sent me the link. So I'm like, yo, what's this, man? I'm like, oh, that's my man.
Yeah.
And
it worked out great for me, bro.
I noticed that kind of jumped the trajectory of what you were doing when that came out. Because I remember getting it and I'm like, you spitting on here.
That was around, like, timing is so great, right? And sometimes we can't plan for timing.
Yeah.
It just so happens that I got called to do that right after the 80 Loafs was getting such critical response too. Mm-hmm. So I said, wow, like I just got thrown the alley. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is gonna be great for me. And then it just so happened that M.A. was in the same cipher. I didn't know who was in the cipher.
Oh, so you just pulled up?
I knew I knew they invited me to come, and I knew there was gonna be other rappers, but I didn't know who. But this was at her emergence, right before she took off.
Yeah.
So as soon as she takes off, I'm like, I'm up. Because now, instead of that getting 300,000, 400,000 views, we gonna be in the millions. That's 1 million more people, 2 million more, 3, 4, 5 million more people that's listening to me that never heard.
Yes.
So timing worked in my like extremely blessed. It was cool too. It was a good environment. We in there, we all kicking and chilling, we meeting each other, whatever. And they didn't have no set order. They was like, who want to go follow me? So now all eyes on me. I like pressure. Like if I do a record with anybody, any artist that knows, if I do a record with them, if you send me to be, unless I can't be in the studio with you, I don't write to that record. We're doing, book the session, I'm coming through and I'm doing it right there. I like the pressure. It's like game time. Like if I'm at home, it's like taking a test online.
Gotcha.
You got all the time in the world, you got all the resources in the world. Yeah. I like personally the pressure, where the pressure's on me right there, right then and there. You know what I mean? So I was like, I don't want to wait. Me. So now all eyes was there. And once I spit, I smoked it. Everybody's like, showing a lot of love. But it felt good because I knew what I was going to do, but I didn't want to sit there and wait till everybody else went.
Gotcha.
I get butterflies. Like, it's like going on stage. I want to go already. So, like, headlining was hard for me at first. Not the performance, but waiting. The anticipation. It's like, dude, I'm sitting here with the butterfly. I just want to get out there and do what I do. But, like, the internet really responded to the 80 Loafs heavy. And then getting invited to that cypher at the time when the internet was talking about that album really helped out too. It propelled things. So I knew, like, man, this next album, this is the one that's really going to change things for me if I make sure to do it the right way. And, several years back now, like, thank God I did. And that's when I ended up doing with Southie. And I knew Southie was going to take them to a world, because now I had eyes and ears on me in places that I'm nowhere near, right?
So walk us through Southie. There's artwork on Southie, right? And I feel like the sound was different.
Yeah.
the sound was a lot different from some of the stuff that I heard before. So
Yeah.
walk us through the Southie project, and how did you get to that point?
So the 80 Loafs LP was really intended to be an EP.
Okay.
But an EP technically is 6 songs and under, or under a half an hour, and it ended up being more than both, right?
Okay.
So it ended up being like 8, 9 records with skits and intro, probably 10, 11. And it was definitely over 30 minutes. So the title changed from the 80 Loafs EP to the 80 Loafs LP.
Okay.
But I approached it more like an EP, but basically like an album, but a condensed album.
Gotcha.
With Southie, I knew I was going to make a full length. It was going to be close to an hour long. It ended up being an hour and 1 minute. And what I wanted to do with Southie was take people into my world, right? So a lot of people don't, now I got listeners in Louisiana, and I got listeners in Oklahoma, and I got listeners all across the map, and then even in other countries. They have no clue where Yonkers, New York is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When they think of New York, they're thinking either the bright lights of Times Square.
Or
they're thinking like, the projects in Brooklyn or Queensbridge,
Yeah.
or things that's been put on
Yonkers
the main.
is not in their brain.
That's not in their brain,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If they think of Yonkers, they only probably think, oh, that's where DMX and the Locks are from. But they don't know. For me, I felt like they don't know. Like X, I feel like X brought them the mind state of a gutter dude from Yonkers.
Yeah.
But I was gonna bring them Yonkers. Like, this is where the environment that made me.
Yeah.
So Southie was that. And what consisted of Southie was, it stands for Stories of Untold Truths Hidden in Existence. That's the acronym. And that's why layered throughout that album, there's several stories on that album.
Yes.
Because I felt like for me to bring them into my world, I don't want to make it just about me. There's a lot that goes on around, you know what I mean? So I got a song on there which is valedictorian speech, and that one went past a lot of heads. But like I'm very proud of that song. That song is really, if that's Brenda had a baby, but if that baby survived, you know what I mean? And then they ended up taking that trauma that they faced. They got adopted in the song. They get adopted, and they become the valedictorian of their graduating college class. You know what I mean? So like,
That's deep.
I wanted to make sure that I was giving people on that record me to the best of my abilities. Not saying the 80 Loafs wasn't. The 80 Loafs was. It was just a little more condensed.
Yeah.
And it also was about more so getting past that 9-to-5 life, that robot life that you're supposed to live, and living out what your true passion is.
Yeah.
Where Southie was, I'm going to let you guys know what created this person that you might have fell in love with this first album.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know the environment that created that person.
Gotcha.
You know?
So that, damn, bro. So I didn't even know, like, because it's a layered album. I
Yeah.
say that because the storytelling and the delivery. That's what I noticed was like different. The delivery was different.
I was real sharp at that time. I had access to studios at any given moment. So there was not saying there was gonna be rust, but I was just like, it's like I was in the gym every day. Put it that way.
Okay.
I was in the gym every day. You're a physical athlete. The more you're practicing, the more you're working out, the better you are.
Craft, yeah.
The better you are. At that given moment, I had, like, shout out to my producer, Grammy. Grammy worked heavy on that album with me. We were in his studio cooking every day.
Now let me ask you a question. Like, as an artist, right? Do you have like the 16s in your head in a book, or you hear a song, you hear the track, and then you instantly start writing to the track?
Yeah.
How does that? Because I want to know. Walk us through like the
Creation process?
Yeah, the creation process of creating like a specific song.
So yes, that's a great question too. Every artist is different. Every creative is different. I haven't wrote on a paper or a note or like my phone since the early 2000s.
So everything is just.
It's in my head. I do write it, but I write it in my head.
Okay.
So what I do is, anybody who's ever been in a session with me, and no, I don't have stuff that like I'll have and then I'll throw it to a beat, because that beat, what I do is whatever beat, like if we're in here and you're the producer and you're playing me some tracks and I'm like, this is the one I want to work on, that beat gets played, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be in that corner just working. The beat's fueling me. What the beat feeds me is what's gonna come out on that record, right?
Gotcha.
I don't necessarily always sit here and say, like, I'm gonna think what type of song do I want to do. I don't do that. I let the beat move me, and then from there, I know that I'm gonna move the people with what's gonna come.
So the beat creates the narrative.
Yes, for sure. It gives me the energy. It gives me that energy, and then I create what I create and transfer my energy onto that to make it a complete record, right?
Gotcha.
So also, I don't necessarily think about a lot of the time like what type of record I want to make.
Okay.
I kind of just want it. I want to be fueled by what the energy. Like I'm big on the energy. Like that's why I say like
same way, bro.
I like working in person. Like I said.
Yeah.
Now for the most part. At that time that's when I started working with my producer and my brother Grammy a lot. So we were creating a lot of beats from scratch too. But moving forward past Southie is when a lot of the records that I started doing was created from scratch, meaning the production too. So I would like to get in there with a producer.
Oh, so you on it, put the 808 there, hi-hat
yeah, we
there.
doing it together. So they're producing like everything from like we coming in there with a blank canvas.
Okay.
And all of a sudden he plays a key and I'm like, oh, that's dope. We start building on that, or we're going through samples and I'm like, yo, try that one out. And then he cuts that up and does. So that's how I like to work now. As I got more seasoned, I prefer to do everything from a blank canvas. I still do work with producers that just send me beat packs and I'm like, this is great, I could work with this. But for the most part, I would prefer to just do it from scratch.
The way for you to get into your real creative spaces.
Oh, yeah.
Blank canvas, let's just build a beat.
Yeah.
And we can kind of create the song from there.
And you know, the crazy thing is that's how a lot of projects start. Because from that record, now there's an energy that was made. So now I'm like, all right, cool. And I'm like, what I've been doing as a solo act now is like all my solo albums are conceptual albums. That's who I am as an artist. Mm-hmm. So it starts with one record or one idea. And then it snowballs. Oh, how can I put this? It's like a puzzle piece. How can this record fit here to make sure it fits the narrative of the album, the concept of the album? You know, like I said with Southie, it was a lot of stories because it was about my environment. So I needed to make sure that they all fit. Every song on that record had to make sense about my environment. I'm telling them what created and molded the person that you're listening to now. So if it was a record that was great but it just didn't fit, cool. That's in the tuck.
Yeah.
I could use it towards something else. I may never use it, but I don't force, like it's a puzzle. I won't put a piece that don't fit just because it's a great record.
Yeah.
Because a lot of albums suffer from that for me. There's like a lot of great records on albums. I don't want to say names and stuff like of some mainstream acts, but there's people that put out albums and there's tons of great records on the album, but the album itself is a bad album. Yeah. They didn't take the time to craft it as one thing.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think as an artist, that's got to be tough, right? Because you create the music, right? But there also has to be a space where you have like, because I don't even know how the game is now because I'm so far removed. Where you got like an A&R in there or something like that. It's like, hey, listen, maybe you should take this, remove this from the album and put this there. You know, the creative process is so tough because as an artist, your job is just to create. But there has to be somebody overseeing the project and being like, yo, Joe, I don't think that goes there.
Yeah.
I think you need to take that, move that out of there, and maybe put something like this in there. How do you, from tracks 1 to whatever, how do you go about that?
So with me, I think one of my best attributes is being a great executive producer. So I love to be able to work on other people's projects because I feel like I bring something to the table that's great. Where I don't want to necessarily change your art. What I want to do is elevate it to as great. I feel like I'm a good curator and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my favorite part about creating an album outside of creating the records, like say if it was your album, is sequencing. Okay. So that's my thing. I like to make sure that the songs are sequenced great, where they flow seamlessly from one to another, where it doesn't feel like an abrupt. I mean, we've all been at parties where we've had a bad DJ and they change the record and it doesn't sound right? It's like you need to have that flawless like transition from one to another.
Was that a learning curve for you when you first started creating albums to kind of create that seamlessness?
Yeah, the 80 Loafs is what really taught me that I can do that really well, right? At an elevated level, because like I said, I approached it like that. I was doing it on the mixtapes, and the mixtapes flow really nicely, but I didn't create the records to fit with one another all the time. So they flew beautifully. Like they would sound nice. Like it wouldn't be an abrupt stop or anything. Like I would make sure that they go from one record to the next.
Gotcha.
But the big picture wasn't the same big picture. Where the 80 Loafs, the big picture was the same big picture, right? So I knew sequencing was good. That's when I realized, like, all right, I'm really good at this. But ultimately, like what you said, that A&R thing, I don't let anyone hear any records of mine that are not in the creation process. So if you're not in the studio with me, I don't send nothing to you. I don't play it in my car until it comes out. Only because of the type of artist I am. Most of my albums they're substance driven and they're not, it's more so to digest, right? So it's like, there's nothing like the first time you're gonna hear it. Mm-hmm. Especially, I want you to hear it start to finish. When I release an album, I always ask listeners, if you can, listen from start to finish the first time. Then from there, listen to however you want.
Yeah, you can kind of break it down.
Because I created it like a movie as opposed to I created it as just a bunch of songs that are good together. So, but I do have certain people. So my man Watson, and then my cousin Genesis are the only two people that have ever heard things.
From the block.
Watson from the block, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you know Watson.
Yeah.
And my cousin Genesis, he raps too. He's down with the camp. We put out an album together called Everything in Between. But those are the only two people that will hear something prior to it being done. So and my engineer Cheddar. I call him Cheddar, but it's Mixed by 20. So those are the only three people that hear it prior to its release, unless you were there when we were recording it. I do take feedback and insight from them. It's normally about, I have a vision, so I know ultimately I'm going to be the say-so on it. What gets pulled, what gets used, what doesn't. But I do take their opinions, and a lot of the time their opinions align with what I wanted to do, and it's just confirmation for me where it's like, yeah, you know what I mean? I need that. But what I did realize too is like they help a lot with decision making on what to do, because I have a lot of albums, like I work a lot. So sometimes, like I said, timing means everything. I'll be releasing, my next album I'll be releasing is called Beautiful Struggle, Dangerous Freedom. And it'll be more than likely early March 2023.
Okay.
Prior to the decision to release that, I created other stuff, and I was like, damn, I had an album it's called The Art Dealer that I wanted to put out.
Okay, yeah.
I weighed out both albums and why, and you know, I have a big year ahead of me coming up in 2023, and the way I want to roll out The Art Dealer, I don't think that I was going to be able to do it to the extent that I wanted to.
Gotcha.
So I said, you know what, it's probably smarter to put this album out as opposed to The Art Dealer. And I had to go to them, to the table, and explain to them why I thought this way, and do you agree, so, you know, that's the stuff that I need that stamp on. Same with like Blizz too. Black, he'll give me that, because that doesn't have to do with hearing the music.
Yeah.
That's more so, listen to my logic, does this make sense to you too? Yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. You know what I mean? But also, you know, this is kind of like a spoiler here, but it's cool. Beautiful Struggle, Dangerous Freedom coincides with my last album that I just released, which is Healer. So they coincide with one another, you know, without giving too much away. So it makes sense that it would come now.
Gotcha.
After Healer. So like, you know, I give them my vision and my opinions and my thoughts on what I think is best for myself and the brand. And then they, you know, they give me their honest feedback on it, and then we move from there. But you should always have people that's
and you circle it.
Yeah, for sure.
The one thing I've noticed about you in this conversation is that you're very business minded, bro. Like when it comes to, because I find that a lot of artists separate the two. I think you put everything together.
Yeah.
You create the art, yet you still have that, because you speak of marketing and reach and those kind of things. Now, we're shifting it a little bit because we've been talking a lot of the creative stuff, like business-wise, as an artist, as an independent artist. What are some of the struggles you face as far as like this new formatting with the downloads?
Yeah.
Because I hear a lot of independent artists saying that they got to move X amount of units to make X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
and then the project's gonna cost this
much for sure. Yeah.
and then so how do you navigate through that?
That's great. That's a great question. So honestly, the music game, just like life, period, it's ever changing. So you have to. What I think I figured out is how to change with the times when it comes to the business and everything outside of the actual art.
Yeah.
Yet still remain the same and true to self with the art. I don't follow trends. I'll never do that. What I do, streaming came around. I had to figure out how to navigate through streaming, right? And for me, my personal opinion, it's a double-edged sword. Like, I love streaming. It's put me in over 200 countries across the world. It's put millions. I have over millions and millions of streams on every album that I release now. Thank God, which is great. Which is not great. What's not great about it is you don't see the coin you should. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't see nothing off of that stuff. And I feel like music is the most undervalued art form when it comes to currency because, all right, I'm a very big movie buff. But let's think of anything, right? Sneakers. We're here. We're both we're sneakerheads, at least formal or still, right? Sneakerheads, right? As much as you love sneakers, one pair, it probably won't stick with you forever, right? Jordan was probably the only.
Yo, it's crazy that you just made that comparison because there's music that I can listen to right now, right? At this age that I remember at 11, 12 years old, where exactly I was at, where I heard
moment,
it.
you probably remember the bars, bar for bar.
Yeah, I can remember the meal I was having. I remember having a slice of pizza and listening to a particular song and being like, damn, bro.
So this is my exact point.
That's heavy, bro. That's
my point is
valid right there.
You could get a pair of ones and people could resell certain ones for thousands of dollars. And an album that might have been the soundtrack for 20 years of your life and continues to be sold for $10 or $15. Now, nobody buys them because it's streaming. So now you're really seeing points to the penny, not pennies, but points to the penny on something that you put your heart and soul into, and not only that you put your heart and soul into, but that has moved other people's souls, right? Yeah. So like, for me, I feel we're undervalued, and that's something that I struggle with because I feel like I'm cutting myself short. But I also do have a plan where I'm gonna just start doing certain things that are just direct to consumer. You know what I mean? And it's not to capitalize monetarily. It's more so to try to change the narrative on the art form that I dedicated my life to and many others have as well. Where, like I said, streaming has worked great for me. I make a decent amount of money, not off streaming, but off of the profile that I have now from streaming.
From streaming, gotcha.
But had I not been a business-minded person, I wouldn't know how to turn that into monetary gain. If I was just waiting for the music, like, to make me money, it wouldn't have made me nothing. You know what I mean? So it's funny that, like I said, I'm so glad you asked that.
Yeah, I just, I mean, a lot of guys don't have the wherewithal to make that type of pivot. I'm happy that you had that vision. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people just, because I feel like a lot of artists, they don't get that. They're so consumed with making the music.
Yeah.
The business side gets.
Well, that's the thing, too, is you have to be, if you have people that's running business efficiently for you, then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But when you...
I feel like there's way too many inconsistencies with that because you can get somebody that doesn't have your best interest at hand.
For sure.
So they can take advantage of it because 100%. You trust them so much. Maybe they're like, okay, cool. So he's not even watching me while I'm doing X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
So I almost feel like it's better to be where your mind space is than to have somebody. It's like, hey, my man gonna take care of that, and we just gonna be over here, creating music.
It's more on your plate, but yes, for me, I just feel like I'm a student of life, right? So it's like anything that I'm interested in, I'm gonna learn about.
I was always taught how you do anything is how you do everything, and just the simple fact that when you create a song, it is a blank canvas, and then you sit there with your brush, and you create this image, right? You create this beautiful picture that we're looking at that is now a song, and I love that you mentioned that whole metaphor with being undervalued music.
Yeah.
Like, you know, somebody having an album that was the sound. I still listen to Illmatic.
This is what I'm saying. That's one of my favorites, if not my favorite album of all time.
Absolutely. Like, if I'm working out, I got a long ass workout or something, I'm throwing Illmatic. I'm getting busy to it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, even if we bought it, there's no way that album's not worth so much more than the $15 that you could have spent. And that's what I feel like musicians, I don't think a lot of us understand that. Because the thing is that...
I don't think they do either.
No.
You literally blew my mind when you mentioned that. When you just said that, I was like, damn, I wonder if people really think like that.
Really understand it, yeah. And I started thinking like that because I'm like, I see, you know, you can see paintings go for millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
You see watches go for millions of dollars.
Cars. Anything. You could put a monetary value on anything.
So, you know, the Wu was very inspirational with my thought process when it came to that. Remember the time that they auctioned off that album?
Oh, yeah.
And that made me realize, you know what? That deserves that. That deserves... Like, if you can buy a vintage car, right? For $1 million. Not a new car, because let's you know, that depreciates. But a vintage car won't depreciate. Yeah. If anything, it's gonna at minimal stay where it's at or appreciate over time. Why is music not appreciating over time? It's art.
Yeah, man, I never looked at it like that. I think it's a very unique stance that you have when you proposition it to somebody that way. I never looked at it like that. It's gonna make me really reevaluate the way I listen and view things.
Movies too, if you really think about it, right? Yeah. I mean, dude, I don't know anything that moves us the same way as music and movies.
Yeah.
And they both are undervalued when it comes to being able to own and possess it as a consumer.
Yes.
You can go to the movies for $12.50. You can buy the DVD or you download it on your thing and then own it forever, whatever. Same with music. And it's like these people that created this, like, look at that right there, right? We got the Scarface movie right there. That movie is infamous and will last forever. I don't think it's earned what its impact. Like
absolutely, man.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing.
That was like it's funny how you mentioned that movie. Because a lot of people, that's how they got their startup, right? They saw a guy go from like rags to riches.
Yeah.
Now there's means to go about it is whatever, but that's the hood story.
Oh yeah, I mean ultimately that's the American dream.
That's the American dream right there. You come here with nothing and create something, by any means necessary, right? In essence, but I mean, I never looked at it like that, bro.
Yeah. That
was a fucking gem. Now I want to lighten up the Convo. I mean, we went through your projects.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And
I appreciate it too. Yeah. And it's dope too because we know each other for so long that you've seen.
I've seen the maturation process.
Yeah, and you were there, so it's like it's always dope when I get to speak to people that seen. You know, if I'm meeting somebody for the first time or they just, it's funny because you don't know when they became a fan of your journey. Yeah. It could have been the last album. It could have been Healer. It could have been Southie. It could have been Passive Paper projects. It could have been. But with you, I know that you've seen.
I was there from the beginning.
From the beginning to where we're at now, so it's like it's dope because we get to talk on a different level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give you your flowers, bro. Like I said, I was there from the beginning, and I saw the grind. Like I seen you moving. That. You know, like we don't speak to each other every day, but I always pay attention to the people who are in my circle who are moving and doing positive things out here. And I saw how you, like I said, when I got that This Is 50, like I said, somebody sent that to me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, well, that's my man.
Yeah, make you feel good. Like, but that's how we should feel, right? When it's us, and that's one thing in the culture that I do not like, right? We should always feel proud when it's somebody that's we know. Yeah. But unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's the opposite way, right? It's like people grunting. And it's like, yo, I should be wanting the people I know to win more than the people I don't know.
I'm gonna say this right now, right? When I watch your journey, right? Obviously, I went into law enforcement and so on, but I was into the music.
Yeah, for sure.
I live vicariously through you, Pax, Black. I live vicariously through you guys because you guys are still doing it, and I'm always have a great appreciation for music.
Oh, you're always gonna have that love for it.
Yeah, I like that.
That don't leave you.
It's in my DNA.
Yeah, that's you.
It's never gonna leave
that's
me. So when I see my brothers creating music and then you creating quality music, quality projects, and people are responding to it, I'm like, yo, these are my people.
For
you know
sure.
what I'm saying?
You hitting it on the nose right now, because I tell my team this all the time. I said, listen, if you don't feel like my project is your project,
yes.
then you're not thinking right, bro. This represents everybody. This is us, because that's the clue. Like Gil, when Gil made it to the NFL, I felt so great, bro, because I said that's the closest I'm getting to the NFL. That's my brother that I grew up with. The same way we grew up together.
It's funny that you say that, because I use him as a conversation piece when I have these young kids who feel like they're in places of despair. Mm-hmm. They have nothing, or I come from nothing, so why should I work? I use Gil as the example. Gil was a hometown kid, right? Went to the same schools that we went to. He was in the streets just like we were. Mm-hmm. And his mom got sick. He had to take some time off, but he got back to it. He stood 10 toes down in that JUCO, got to the SEC for football. So
biggest conference,
and if you come from New York, not too many guys go over there and play in the SEC and are successful in the SEC.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Right? Goes to the SEC, does his fucking thing, ends up playing in the league for a period of time.
Yep.
I remember having a conversation with him, and I remember he was a little down on himself. And I go, Gil, man, never forget humble beginnings, bro. Like, like no one would have ever expected you to put on a Packers jersey or a Patriots jersey.
No way.
You come from a place where, like, a lot of us don't make it to old age or to make it to any kind of place of success. So whether you feel like you fell short or not, there's some kid that's looking at you as like, dude, you're the GOAT, bro. Like, you came from one.
You're the milestone.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they have to aspire to where you're at now, because you set the tone for them.
Tone, for sure, bro.
And I just, it's funny that you bring him up, because I always use him a lot, man. And I use guys that, like I said, are from the same environment that I'm from, and are doing productive things with their life. Especially with this music, because with this music shit, you can get really sidetracked.
Oh, for sure.
Because of...
It's super discouraging,
too.
Yeah,
because the shit that's going on right now, you know what I'm saying? And how, like you said, undervalued and underappreciated the art is, the craft, especially when you're like as meticulous as you are when it comes to creating, right? Because anybody could put out music.
No,
let's call it square,
For
right?
Sure. Most people do now.
Yeah, exactly. You can put out something, if it catches, then all of a sudden you at the forefront, and then next a label's coming to you and you got some kind of deal, and then you at where you at. It's like anybody can do that, but can anybody create these timeless pieces of music that live forever in our hearts and in our spirit?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that's the difference between you and somebody who's out here just, trying to create a catchy track so they can,
Well, music-wise, for me, it was always about timelessness, and it was always about longevity. Like, I want people to be listening and talking about my stuff.
Let me ask this question. I like to ask artists this. In a perfect world, right? And I know you got your team. I don't want to take this away from your team or anything like that, right? Right? So let's say you sign a major, right? And you put out your first project, right? What producers are you reaching out to? And what artists would you like to be featured on your album, on your debut album? I always like to ask this question because this is almost like a fantasy league type of question.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And any artist has thought about stuff like
Absolutely.
that. Without a doubt. Well, this is producer-wise, it also would depend on where the feel of the album was going, right?
Yeah.
But let's say...
right now, currently, in the space that you're in life, you got an album coming out 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And they tell you, hey, the budget is this, you can get whoever you want.
Yeah, for sure. There's some of the producers that I would definitely love to work on an album. I would love to work with Big Crit as a producer and as an artist. I would love to.
Crit, okay.
I think we would complement each other very well. I love the Alchemist production.
Yo, you know what I was gonna say? I was gonna say this exact thing. It's crazy that you brought it up. If I heard you on an Alchemist track, bro, I think I'd lose my mind.
Yeah, dude.
Because I think your cadence, the delivery, hand in hand with Alchemist beat.
For sure.
I'm happy you mentioned him.
Al. I love Madlib.
Okay.
I like Madlib a lot. I love Hit Boy, especially with what he's done with Nas in recent years. And you know what I love? Oh man. And he's my favorite. Nas has always been my favorite all time.
Man.
I'm just so happy to see him. The run they're on is impressive, and it should be celebrated.
You bring up Hit Boy and Nas.
Yeah.
And the sound that they're creating is almost like they're reinventing that vintage sound that we grew up listening to, but not. It doesn't sound vintage.
It don't sound dated.
It's new shit.
It still sounds modern.
And that's the shit that I love.
That's why I love Hit Boy, and that's why I was mentioning him. That's also, like, I feel like he understands how to... First of all, he's versatile as ever. He can make beats for any type of artist that fits their type of music, right?
Yes.
But he understands the importance of the feel of that era, the feel that era gave its listeners, yet at the same time without sounding very dated. Because that's, I feel like we would make great music together because that's always been a thing of mine. My music don't sound like it's came out in the 90s. It sounds like it came out when it came out.
Yeah.
But you can tell that I'm influenced by that era. And I always felt...
The golden era,
yes,
I like to say.
Yes, and I feel like that's important. Like, I don't ever want to sound dated. But I want to sound modern, but I don't do trends either. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So people that would compliment... There's somebody I would love to do for one record on the album too would be Havoc. I would love to do something with Havoc.
Man.
I feel like, you know, Havoc had some of my favorite beats of all time.
Yo, you know what's funny? I started going through his catalog. I realized that he was behind a lot of
stuff.
A lot of the bangers that I grew up listening to, loving. I didn't know he was around.
For sure.
You know, so
I like Static. I love Static Selector and what he's done a lot with Joey Badass in recent years too. Because Badass is another one who came into the game sounding real 90s. Where if you listen to how his music's progressed now, it doesn't sound so like he still sounds like he was influenced by 90s, but the music itself sounds current, and I appreciate that. You know what I mean? Those are some people off the top of my head. I'm sure.
So that's producers.
Artist wise.
So
I mentioned Crit. That's one of the artists. Nas is my all time. You know, if I could do a record with Nas, that's my favorite of all time as well. You know, and some of the new dudes that I listen to a lot right now. I like Vince Staples a lot.
Okay.
I think Vince had a great album with Ramona Park. I like Westside Boogie. Boogie's a great artist.
It's different, bro. It's different.
And so this might surprise people, but I really enjoy Kodak a lot too. And
really?
Yeah, I really enjoy Kodak.
I would never expect you to say
I know most people probably wouldn't. But you know, I think he's some of his music is just hits you. And there's a lot of I love what, you know, if I could do some dumping joints, like I said, on the album it'd be different, but you got Conway and them, of course.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? They're spitting.
I'll tell you that I would enjoy listening to you.
I would like that.
Like Conway.
I would like
Conway
that.
Machine, Benny the Butcher, like,
yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Westside, you know, those guys.
Shout out to my man Rand, you know, Rand's spitting crazy right now. But like some of the artists that I would really like to work with will probably be those that I mentioned for sure. You know.
That's what's up. I always ask that question to artists just because everybody got that wish list. Oh,
I like Gibbs a lot. And of course Kendrick.
I was gonna say, to me Kendrick he's different, bro. Like, and I think his last project was received, but you had to be a listener and a connoisseur of hip hop to really take that album was complete, dude. Like,
you know what I love about Kendrick, bro? Honestly, is that it don't have to be for it doesn't have to be for everybody.
Yeah.
But for who it's for, they're gonna hold on to that and cherish it.
That was a project, bro. I remember when it came out, I'm listening to it. Yo, it was a good 2 weeks straight. I was just driving and listening to that joint because that's how
you gotta absorb that type of music.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's how you really absorb the music, really get into the bars and the breakdown on some of these things. And I was just like, yo, he's on to something. You know, I don't know if he's gonna continue to create more music, but that sound, this particular album, because Good Kid, Mad City to me is a classic.
Yeah,
it's one of my,
me too.
It's in my classic albums.
Me too.
And to this day, I still listen to it. Like I said, if I'm doing something or I got a long ride, that's in the rotation.
Album,
yeah, for sure. So, you know, I'm happy that you mentioned those artists.
I also think, like, especially when it comes to Kendrick, when it comes to Nas, when it comes to Crit, when it comes to even Vince and Westside, right? Like, using these people. I feel like they're also conceptual dudes, right? And that plays a part because I don't necessarily want, like, I'm a conceptual artist, so for me to put somebody else on the album that's not necessarily that conceptual, unless they can understand my vision and go with it, it's not gonna pan out how I want it to. You know what I mean? So I want people that they're gonna understand because they have, although their vision is, we're all different creatives, they have those visions too.
Yeah.
So you need somebody that can understand and give you, like, if I do a record, like if Blizz sends me a record, I already know what he wants me to do on that record.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna give them me, but I'm gonna make sure that I'm giving them me that fits this record for you. I don't want to. You don't want something that just sounds like, and I'm not gonna say names either, but there's certain artists too that they're just too chameleon where it's like, anytime they're on a song with somebody, they sound like that person.
Yeah.
Like, nah, bro. Like, that's why I love the Biggie and Bone record.
Oh yeah, he was the first dude. See, so I try to tell people, me and you think the same, and I'm happy that we're having this conversation. I tell people that track was the first time you heard a guy from the East Coast, right? Completely alter his bounce to fit
there.
the feature.
And you know what was dope about it? It was on his album.
Yes. Like, and the bounce was crazy.
Oh, crazy.
I don't give a shit what anybody says. I think, and actually, I want to say this here, and I want to hear what you have to say about this, right? Because I feel like that Life After Death album was the template for this golden era of hip hop. That album, I believe, was the precursor for every album thereafter. Because he gave you a commercial track, he gave you a street track, he gave you a storytelling track, he gave you that heartfelt track. He gave you different regions, bro.
Yeah.
I'm going back.
Yes.
Back. He changed his bounce so that's a West Coast bounce, West Coast beat. Then he gave you that Bone Thugs, right? And then he gave you that that street edge, that the 10 Crack Commandments. Now, mind you, this is 2022. We're in about to be 2023, and I can still listen to that joint, and that shit still rings
Without
out.
a doubt.
And
I personally believe that's the greatest double album in rap history.
thank you. All right.
And all the greats did it, right? So, like, you know, Jay did it, Nas did it, multiple greats did it, Pac did it, and Pac's is close.
Yes.
So All Eyes on Me. If somebody says that over Life After, I'll never argue with them.
Yeah.
For me, though, it was Life After Death. And you know what was so impressive to me about that? Big was already a really good rapper, but his rapping got so much better. From Ready to Die, like, Big was so captivating on Ready to Die because his pain was felt, his storytelling was there, and he was a really good rapper. By the time Life After Death came around, he was an incredible rapper. Like, he was rapping circles around other people. And to me, that means something because most people come in the game and they rap worse as time goes on. So to see that he was, see that he was still evolving as a lyricist, because you could like Ready to Die or Life After Death better, I'll never debate that. But if you say that he was not a better rapper on Life After Death than Ready to Die, then I know you're not listening.
You're not listening. Thank you.
Because he was definitely a better rapper at that point. And that's impressive, you know?
Yeah, man. That shit is, oh, man.
Because he was already at the top of the game.
Yeah, dude, he was, and it's crazy because he was gunned down at 24 years old. I can only imagine.
Dude, they so young, man.
Yeah, what would have happened.
At the time, we didn't realize how
if he gave us
young
another decade of music, you know what I'm saying? What the face of hip-hop would look like if those guys were still around. But, you know, we've been doing this for about an hour and some change, man. And I'm definitely open to doing a part 2 to this. But the part 2 I want to do, and I was talking to Jay. I wanted to do Black Vanity.
Yeah.
But I want
my guys too, man.
I want the setting to be a little bit different. I want to see if maybe I can get Black. I can get in the studio with Black's on.
Yeah, we can go over there.
And then we can do the. We could
go over there. We could do anything. If you want to do it there, we can do it at a restaurant. Anything.
Oh yeah, actually, you know what? Actually, I might like that restaurant situation.
Might be good. We have a good meal afterwards.
Okay, yeah. So let's set that up. Listen, so for those of you guys who are subscribers and listeners to the Behind the Mic podcast, man, I like I said in the beginning of it, I was trying to get this done for a while, man, and as you can see, you know, you've been tuned in for an hour and some change, and it was a riveting conversation. So we're definitely gonna do a part 2. The part 2 is gonna be probably like I want to see maybe the part 2 will probably stretch like an hour and a half.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're gonna
There's a lot of life stuff we
didn't get into.
We didn't get into the life stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And shout out to you coaching, brother, too.
Thank you, man. Listen, man.
I love that.
You know, it was something that I think we were called to do. Like I said, we were speaking about off camera, and we just know, we giving back, man. But for those of you guys who are subscribers and listeners, please like, share, and really tap into this episode, because I feel like, we spoke about some things. If you really believe in music and you really understand the craft and what goes into it, I think you get a lot from this episode. So with that being said, man, I wish you guys a blessed and productive one, and I'll see you next episode.
Thank you again, my brother. I appreciate you.
Anytime, kid.